Welcome to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here to talk about what goes on in the village, the township, you know, those government entities that make laws, regulations, and ordinances that affect you out there.
That's right. And whether you live in the village of Oxford, the village of Leonard, Oxford Township, or Addison Township, these are the people that you elected, and the commissions and the committees that make decisions that directly affect you, whether you chose to go to that meeting that affected you or not. And that's why we're here.
Pretty much, except we also look for the humor. And believe me, there's lots of humor in these meetings. Would you agree? Yeah. Sometimes it bubbles to the top by accident.
And sometimes it sinks to the bottom.
It does. It does do that. One thing I want to remind folks out there is, of course, the August 2nd primary that's coming up.
That's right.
It's very important for the township. Make sure that you get out there and vote. And the people that, of course, pass that first test and whoever you put on, then will be involved in the November 8th
That's right.
contest.
Remember, you're not being tested, the candidates are.
Yeah, as though we won't be tested later.
Actually, you are being tested as to how good a citizen you are to go out there and vote.
Absolutely. And you know, I can kind of feel that enthusiasm. People are going to vote this year.
Are they?
They are, I think. Yeah, I believe they are. Don't you?
What are you going to do, flood basements?
No. Well, let's talk about a couple of meetings that came up, shall we? First one is going to be the Addison Township ZBA.
All right.
Zoning Board of Appeals, right?
That's right.
Okay.
What was it, the court of last resort?
Yeah, actually the judicial portion of the township. You know, they're the ones that-
Quasi-judicial.
Yeah, right. Okay, Quasimodo, whatever. You're into that kind of thing, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I
sure.
thought so. You would bring that up. Anyway, the next one we'll talk about is the Oxford Township Board of Trustees.
Always
which is
interesting.
Yeah, interesting stuff going on there. But let's get to the Addison ZBA. The chairman of that is John Hatfield. It's a 5-member board.
They're
Actually,
all appointees, not elected, right?
they're all appointed, right.
Okay.
They're appointed by the trustees. And Robert DeWitt wasn't on this board, but he's an alternate. He's
Okay.
one person as a sign.
Was he there?
He was there, I believe, but Lawrence Smith is on that board. Trevor Hayward is on the board. Tony Spina, and Eric Sempt is on that board.
Good.
All good people, you know, and they volunteer for it. They do a great
people,
job.
one and all.
People all good and all. What, good and all?
One and
good?
all.
One and all. Okay. Anyway, there are good people out there at Addison Township. Love reviewing their meetings, particularly the Parks and Recreation group. They're really interesting group.
They're your pet.
Yeah, they are. And I love the Little Leonard, you know, meetings that they have.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the way they run things.
Well,
But anyway,
there's not 600 people in Leonard, but yet they are a lively group out there.
well, you got me sidetracked again.
Yes,
so,
I did.
So anyways,
You opened the door.
I did, yes. First thing, of course, is the Pledge of Allegiance. They did that. They're getting rid of or over with, not getting rid of, but the preliminaries. The agenda was read over, and approval of the minutes from last month. Let me see. By the way, the minutes were for June 2nd.
Okay.
So this is a July meeting that they had, of course. There's a variance that was before the board that was to be reviewed, and it's from Brian and Fabian Postivo. And what they're looking for is a variance of 20 feet requirement.
They want to set back the setback.
Setback. See, they're required a 100-foot distance from the lake, and they're next to Round Lake. So the way the ordinance reads, or the law reads, is that
Sounds like a sewer system to me.
it is a sewer system, and that's exactly what they have to do, is replace the old sewer system. Now, this is the second time that they came before this board, the ZBA. But the ZBA last time, in the last meeting, had to put together information for the attorney for an opinion.
Okay.
And the opinion was that there's a little, what they call a puddle. Not really a lake, but it's like...
This is different than the PUD that you often refer to.
Absolutely.
This is actually a puddle.
This is actually a puddle.
Okay.
But that's what the commissioners, you know, referred to it as.
Okay.
A puddle. Not a lake, but they wanted to know if it was wetlands or whatever. Well, the opinion came back from Bob Davis that it is a part of the wetlands, and that therefore is subject to the ordinance requirements.
I see.
So
in the scissors cut paper game of the ZBA, puddle trumps sewer.
Well, actually, what happened here is, I don't know if you're aware, but the county requires a 50-foot setback and not a 100-foot.
Okay.
But the township requires a 100-foot, of course.
It's their lake.
Yeah, and it's their right to do that. They can make it better than what the original ordinance is from the county or from the state if they want, but they can't make it less than. So,
Kind of like ballpark ranks.
yeah, right. So they did talk about, the peak of the land, the lay of the land. They did talk about this little puddle was across the road.
The puddle was across
It
the
was
road,
across-
not on their property.
Not on their property, but across
Oh.
the road. But see, even with that, you have to be so far apart. And so they came up with a consensus, this board, that the gravel, because of the underlayment and so forth for the road, acts as pretty much as a barrier too. So there was
Gravel?
yeah,
Or
it
seems like it'd be pretty permeable.
yeah. Well, it's asphalt, around the lake, but it's got a gravel base,
Yeah.
and that's quite deep.
Okay.
So they're saying that would act as a barrier, keep
Really?
anything from
Gravel.
It's somewhat, yeah, gravel, and it's the width, of course, of the road. So they didn't feel that was an issue. Plus, they felt that the 20 feet that they asked for, which from 100, they'd have 80 feet, still from the lake. And by the way, the drainage has to drain back or up, cannot drain into the lake. Now that's tricky, isn't it? Sometimes they have to use pumps,
But necessary.
but necessary. Yep.
We don't want any algae blooms up here like in Florida.
No, and no chunkies out there in the lake.
Ooh.
That would be bad news, wouldn't it? Okay,
Yeah, boy.
but anyway,
Floaters
so
are not welcome.
right, that's for sure. Floaters, that's a bad place to have them. So anyway, so they described this puddle, and they said, well, how did this puddle get there in the first place?
Oh, my God.
And we're back to the puddle. They said, well, it was man-made puddle.
Oh, really?
So,
I mean, it's got a dam on one side, little dam.
get this.
Keep the level up.
One of the ZBA commissioners, he says, can we unman it? In other words, fill it in.
Or
No.
drain it. Can it be drained?
No, you can't do any of that. 'Cause
Why?
it's considered wetlands and it's on the map.
I don't think puddle and wetlands actually went into the same definition.
No, but it was put on. It was put on actually the map.
To make a
for the
wetlands?
township.
They did that to make a wetlands? You said it was man-made.
It was man-made, but it was included in the map. So once it gets on the map, you know what it is. Once you get legislation,
Kind of like anything you read on the web. It's true.
absolutely. Okay, so the puddle will remain. And so after all this big discussion on puddles, they decided that they would go ahead and approve this.
Oh, boy.
And which they did. And by the way, the owners of this property that need to put in this septic field were out of town. They were out of the country, so they weren't there. But they had representation there by a fellow named Kyle Say, and he was the attorney.
Well, I would assume that this was the only option they had in terms of what kind of a septic field they would put in.
It was the only option they had because of the
Okay.
lay of the land and
All right.
cut. So and the site plan.
And once again, the ZBA comes through with a definitive answer.
They did. They made a decision that otherwise couldn't be made in a legal way. They said we will.
What do you mean by that?
They have to sidestep. I would say sidestep. That's a good word.
They granted a variance.
They granted a variance of the ordinance.
Right.
And they're the only ones that can do that. So that was done. They said, is there any correspondence? None. No correspondence. Good.
All right.
They had go on
Yep,
with the
yep.
meeting. Zoning board reports. Larry Smith made a report, and he said elevation for these septic fields are critical, and he would like them to review various requirements from engineers. So
This
they-
is in
they'll look
general?
at that. This is in general.
Okay.
Other than that, public forum, there was actually nothing going on in the public forum when people were asked to speak, and that pretty much ended that meeting.
If
with-
indeed there were any people.
there were some people there.
Oh, were there?
Yeah,
Okay.
there were. And we'll talk about more when we come back right after this.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
Welcome back to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we have just finished up a wrap on Addison Township Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes, indeed.
In the second part of this, we're going to talk about the Oxford Township Board of Trustees. Now, there's a lot that went on there.
There is?
There
Oh, boy.
is, yeah. Bill Dunn, of course, the supervisor of the township. He also acts as the chairman of this particular trustee board. Does a great job, too, I think. Okay?
Yeah.
Keeps everybody in line. He has this big whip or club, I'm not sure. But
Oh.
anyway, we'll spread the rumor. That's a rumor. Usually you spread rumors, but
No, I don't.
this time I will.
Not me.
Watch out for Mr. Dunn. Anyway, they did Pledge of Allegiance, got all the preliminaries out of the way. Agenda request for a change was by Buck Kreiderman. However, it was denied by the chair because there wasn't enough information available to put it on the docket, the item that he wanted to discuss. And so they said, let's let you put it on next month's agenda. So
There wasn't enough information.
it wasn't enough information to other trustees. In other words, they hadn't been passed out. They weren't given enough advance notice of what he was going to talk about.
Oh, so he wasn't really going after a misquote or anything. It was
No.
something else. Okay.
Something else, yep. So anyway, so it's postponed. It'll be on the docket, for the next month's agenda. Excuse me. And the next thing they did is they approved, of course, all the regular scheduled agenda.
Okay.
Got that all set. Then they asked for public comment. Now this is interesting. They asked for public comment up front, and usually at the end they will too.
Yeah.
If there's anybody.
Well, there's a public comment, and then there's a public comment for items not on the agenda.
Well, this would be not on the agenda to start with.
Right.
So they want to get that out of the way and get some ideas. I want to tell you, you talk about forks and pitchforks and fire.
Oh my gosh.
This building was packed with people, and that's a pretty big room that they have.
Well then, someone must have said something.
Yeah, and they were all there. The public was there to make comment on a certain subject, which we'll get into right now.
Someone's cow was about to be gored.
Just about, yep. Bruce Myers, who owns property over an area where they're talking about putting a foster care home.
Okay.
You may have read it in the Leader.
Foster care or
Foster care
like
for
a
children.
rehab? Oh, for children.
For
Okay.
children.
Okay.
And it's at the old Hunter's Ridge hunting location. I don't know
Well, how
if
does
you're
that work?
Southwest
Some
Quadrant.
parents, let's say a couple, can bring a foster child into their house. But is this more of an institutional kind of a thing?
Right, because these are children that for some reason or another have never been adopted in a permanent home.
So you're
Or
talking
they're
a
taken
group of
custody.
children.
Yeah, this would be a whole group of children.
Okay.
Home.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of what it's called. We'll get into that. They have a name for it.
Orphanage?
I was thinking more of a line prison, but
I don't know.
it's not a prison. But anyway, so Bruce Myers, his biggest complaint is that this is zone agricultural. Can you say cow and moo and horses and that kind of thing and crops and that's the way the zoning was meant to be in that
They're not
area.
planning on using these children to get out there and plow and plant and stuff.
To milk
or- no.
cows. I'm not sure. They could.
Sorry, that's bad.
That could be a plan. We don't really know that, but we
No.
could spread that rumor.
No,
You want
okay.
to do that?
You said it was farmland.
It is farmland.
I just went with it.
Okay, zone farmland. And as he pointed out, this is actually a business, and you have to be state licensed in order to have one of these.
Okay.
And the state is actually going to pay subsidies, to have these children.
Where would these children be if they weren't there?
Probably in jail.
No.
They're from homes that are.
But are they in a state or county institution right now?
I really can't answer that question. I'm not sure where they come
Okay,
from.
I just wondered what the stages of development were. Okay.
I know that they're in homes that are broken up, where abused, where they've been abused at home in homes, that kind of thing.
Isn't
And they-
Crossroads for Youth kind of like that?
Very similar to it, almost identical.
Okay.
And so that's one of the complaints that some of the people, that own properties there had too.
Okay.
Is that they have trouble keeping the little critters in.
Well,
And there's occasional issues involved, and they don't want that to happen. But needless to say, the zoning is the biggest complaint that they have.
is this like in being zoned farmland? Are they surrounded by other farms or residential area?
Actually, agricultural, you're allowed to have single family homes in
Well,
that area
every,
as well.
every farm needs a
Yeah,
home.
right. And a home needs a farm, a family.
But I mean, we're talking massive acreage here, or just
20 acres
just a
is
home-
usually.
a home
A
plot.
minimum of 20 acres
is a farm.
of land is
Can be a
considered
farm.
agricultural out in that area.
Okay.
Okay?
I think that defines it. That's
Yeah,
good.
you did chase me on that one, but I
Yeah.
did have the answer for you, didn't I?
Didn't get him again.
He keeps trying, folks. But anyway, and the point was, that the master plan shows this agricultural, so that's the intent
Okay.
for this property to be used, not for an establishment, such as what they want to put in there. It's called House of,
That's their commercial name.
House
House
of
of-
Providence or something along
House
that
of
line.
what? Providence?
Yeah, let's get back to that one later. That's pretty good when I can't read your writing.
Not my writing.
Okay, a number of people stood up and they said that they were not for it, having this operation. It's called
Where
an
exactly
operation.
was it anyhow?
It's actually on the corner of, or in that area of Arbor and Davison Lake Roads. You know where that would be?
Davison Lake I got, but not Arbor. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Apparently it's one of those roads down there, side road, whatever. But anyway, it is definitely farm agricultural area.
Okay.
A lady named Barb Blonick that lives on Barber Road, she stood up and she said she was totally against the development of this foster home.
Are people concerned about their property values, or
They
what?
are.
Okay.
They're concerned about that. There was a lot of other issues. They're concerned about, maybe there could be some mischievous activity going on, from these kids are there. Jim Eunice, I believe it is, from Gardner Road, he also was against the project.
Okay.
Let me see, special land use. He said there should not be a special land use approved. And the reason for that, of course, is because that wasn't the intent. That you don't just willy-nilly go out and provide special land use just because guy comes in, and by the way, these people paid $800,000 for this property.
Did they say how many clients would be in this place?
They did not. It's probably out there, because
Okay.
they had to file
I mean,
paperwork with the state, I'm sure.
size is usually a pretty good indication.
Right. Yep. So I'm sure that information is there, and they got to be licensed, of course, with the state too. So it hasn't reached that point at all.
Of course, once your foot's in the door, then expansion is just negotiable.
Yeah, it could be. Could be really negotiable once you're there. And that was the point too, is that once you set a precedent, one of the property owners said, once you set a precedent, then this property that all of these people have purchased around this area, keeping it agricultural for horses, farm, animals, that kind of thing, all of that concept is going to be destroyed, And so they're concerned about that, and rightfully so.
Well, I mean, that probably had a lot to do with why they bought that property themselves.
Right. Well, we do know in the village, in these lots, you can't have chickens. Although if you were in Leonard, you can probably have chickens. We know how that goes. Have an acre of,
Yeah, you can have your chicken outfit.
you could have, I think it's 20 chickens, but no rooster. Anyway.
Where's this?
That's in Leonard.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
In Leonard?
Yeah, they're
in
really-
Leonard.
yeah, in
In
the village
downtown
of Leonard.
in
In the village of Leonard.
in downtown urban Leonard.
Yeah, but it's a neat little town. I mean, you don't want to hold your breath too long because you'll be right through it. But
They have little chicken crossing signs there.
they have interesting ordinances there, and we'll have to discuss
okay,
that again.
all right.
It's been quite a while since we've talked about
Okay.
their ordinances,
All
which
right.
have never changed. But with that, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here talking about the Oxford Township Board of Trustees meeting that they had. And we just got finished talking about this property, you know, that's agricultural and how people objected to it. And now we're going to talk about a gentleman who came before the trustees in order to make a, I guess, acclamation or a plea for business. His name is Ken LaPlace.
Okay.
Now, Ken LaPlace used to be a manager here about, what, 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
Roughly 2012 is when, yeah.
Okay. But anyway, he started out, which is rather interesting, by saying that he wanted to take over what the TV station here does and can do it for a whole lot less money. And they can take what remaining money they have and they can put it into their general fund or wherever they want to put it. And he said, for one reason for it is that public access is dead.
My heart.
He's got, you know, here's a guy that really doesn't get it, I think. He wants to handle public access.
But don't call it that.
But it's dead. Why would you want it? No, I think, you know, there's a lot of public out there that would disagree with that.
Yeah.
You know, local community and so forth. And by the way, you just did some stats, didn't you? On what improvements since actually this
From
gentleman
2012, we did a stat on YouTube views, 2012, 13, 14, 15, and we were showing just over 50% growth from 2012 to 2013, 2013 to 2014, and from 2014 to 2015, it was over 108% growth.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's like 33,000 views.
Well, according to this gentleman, he'd have you believe that it was zero when he left. Well, it might have been. I don't know, because he was fired.
Oh,
You know, by the Communications Commission, and I know that there were some other issues involved previous to that. One involving nepotism possibility, where he wanted to hire some of his relatives into the station here. But anyway, all those things happen. It's water under the bridge. But this guy does not forget anything. Apparently, it's been what, 4 years? My gosh, and he brings it forward. But anyway, the station is doing great. We are updated all to digital. At one point, he said that the station wasn't digitally equipped. Everything in the station is digitally equipped. Only thing
I got digits.
There's only one decoder that isn't, and we're looking to change that soon. So we're good.
Absolutely.
Yep. So anyway, so all of what this man brought before the trustees is really debunked, I think, at this point.
Looking for work.
And actually, at one point, Bill Dunn, because he rambled on, and he said to him, he said, "Could you please speed this up?" He said, "It's going to be a long meeting," and he goes, and he went ahead. So not a good thing with Bill Dunn, the chairman and township supervisor. So anyway, so he finally, you know, left the podium. With that, they did discuss the property again, the agricultural thing, just briefly, with a number of people that stepped forward to complain about, you know, this thing should not go through. And unfortunately, some engineers, they said, approve this, and some planners said that it was a good thing to do, according to the news item that was in the Leader. But the Leader didn't really support that. They just reported news as they usually do. So, and this is the next step, you know, in the process. So anyway, the government program continues to move forward.
All right.
And we'll see what happens down the line, huh?
You betcha.
Yeah? We'll see if we got those little horses running through those pastures or not. We should. I would hate to see it changed, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great area for that. They discussed safety issues, of course, with that property, and we did discuss that briefly. But there's another thing that they had come up with Pat McWilliams. with Keefe Engineer, came forward with the second part of a plan for Oakland Woods preliminary site plan. Remember we talked about that a while
Oakland
back.
Woods.
Oakland Woods. And
There was some kind of split up of property there, wasn't there?
there was. And actually the homes that they want to put in there are pretty sizable. You know, I think they're an acre or 2 acres each. But the fire chief at that time, during the initial planning commission, he complained that the dry hydrants that were there.
Dry hydrants?
Yeah, it's
What's
dry
it-
hydrant.
what
It
the
pumps
hell-
out of a pond.
Oh,
But what happened here is a dry hydrant isn't working. Will you please let me finish this? He said the reason why it doesn't work is there's weeds and everything else, from the pond, that's plugging it. So he said if this thing goes through, the fire chief, Schultz said, I'm requesting 2 of these dry hydrants, and of course this one has to be fixed.
how much do they cost?
Well, they're really not concerned with that because it's up to the developer to fix it. So it's not going to be the township or you folks out there. They're going to pay for it. And Jack Curtis actually chimed in and made them aware, because Jack sits on this, and he's also on the planning board.
If one of these dry hydrants is clogged by weeds, whose responsibility is it to clean it up and make it work?
It would be the association. Make sure that that hydrant is working. The chief, well, actually, they test these, I guess, a couple times per year, and if they don't have the proper flow, then they get a hold of people and have them correct it.
They write them a citation or something, or what?
Well, no, they'll just give them a warning that it's got to be done, and then if they don't do it, then they're talking legal or citation. But
Well,
they
especially if there's a fire.
Yeah,
Now that
right.
they've been properly notified.
Well, I would be the first if I owned a home there and say, yeah, let me sign that thing, wouldn't you? I need water, put out the fire if my house is on fire. You would agree with that one, right?
You betcha.
Okay, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. And as a matter of fact, Jack Curtis said that the development group that's going to do this, they said that they would take care of all that, no problem. The other issue that came up about this development is they want to put an intersection down on these roads. And the understanding I have is that people travel this road with a speed limit of 50 miles per hour. And
When you
it's
say an
gravel.
intersection, is that an intersection as with a light?
No light, just
Okay.
a stop sign
Okay.
intersection.
Okay. Oh, a four-way stop?
Well, it could be a 4-way stop. That's not really defined yet, but really the township has nothing to do with the roads. Those are all county.
Okay.
So-
So they got to go somewhere else.
Well, they got to go with whatever requirements, the County Road Commission provides.
And if they
And
want
also
to,
state-
and if they want to make it a stop.
And if they want to make it a stop. Well, actually, it's under recommendation. So the township can make recommendation.
Okay.
And usually the planning commission makes a recommendation and the township approves it if they think it's a good thing to do.
But if it's not their authority, then they pass
Right.
that up to the county.
Right.
Okay.
And actually, Bill Dunn brought up a pretty good issue here. He says, 50 miles an hour is pretty fast. And he said, well, can you change the speed limit? He said, no, you can't change it. That we don't have control of that.
Oh, that's that old
Yeah.
50 miles an hour down gravel roads
It is.
thing
And
again.
you see the dust, the stones, and everything flying. As
Oh, I
they-
thought that one was dead.
No. And get this, there's an S curve down there.
Oh, good.
So you can't really see.
So people can drift.
Yeah. So Bill Dunn says, hey, put a breakable gate for the fire department.
A
there.
breakable gate.
Breakable gate. I didn't know there was such a thing. And I've been in building business for quite a while. But I tell you what, Bill Dunn's pretty sharp. He said,
What's going to be gated
one end of the complex is going to be gated.
to prevent entry to what?
Well, to a road that's not supposedly accessible unless there's a fire, where fire trucks have to get in. And then
Okay.
they will crash the gate, and then they will make it to the fire.
Just
wherever
like
it
in the
is.
movies.
Just like in the movies. And speaking about what's in the movies, what's coming up next?
Well, we do have meetings coming up. On 7/26 at 6:30 in the evening, Oxford Board of Education meets at the board offices in downtown Oxford. And on 7/28 at 7 o'clock, the Oxford Township Planning Commission meets, another one of your favorites.
Yes.
And on 8/1 at 7 o'clock, the Village of Oxford Zoning Board of Appeals will be meeting. And on the same day at 7:30, the Addison Township Park Committee, your favorite. And on 8/2, the Village of Oxford Planning Commission will be meeting at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. And this is Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
We'll catch you right here next time, right here.
See you then.